It's not that you're never going to get that same sensation. Like everyone loves that sensation you get when you eat something sweet. So we're not talking about getting rid of that sensation. We're talking about enabling your body to get that sensation with just such a low dose of sugar that it doesn't have any negative health implications. Hello, sir.
Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I like your background. You're
Thanks.
doing better than I am with this stuff.
Well, it's the movie. It's the movie.
Absolutely. I like it. Where are you at?
I'm in Seattle, Washington.
Very nice. I'm in Chicago.
Oh, nice. Yeah, my brother lives in Chicago.
Oh, he does?
I went to school in DePaul with the W in Greencastle, Indiana.
I went to DePaul, the other one.
Oh, really?
That's the Indiana one. I went to the Chicago one.
That's what I accidentally applied because I had not heard of it. So I accidentally sent in my college application to DePaul with the intention of sending it to DePaul. And they were like, we didn't get your application. I was like, wow, you're really not going to admit me now because I sent it to the wrong school.
I'm telling you, it's so easy to confuse. It's just like a letter, literally. Yeah. It sounds the same. Oh, that's funny in that way.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, when we always lose to DePaul, right? I mean, DePaul is like a well-known, larger school, whereas DePaul is this tiny, rinky-dink, Greencastle, Indiana. So I always have to specify not DePaul. I doubt you have to say, I'm not talking about DePaul in Greencastle, Indiana, if you were wondering.
What'd you study out there? What'd you apply to school for?
My degrees are in economics and computer science.
Interesting. Well, you've done a lot with your life. I mean, to this point, you in a sense, you probably use that and start a whole new thing that I'm telling you, Jonathan, no movie I've seen a lot of movies and everything reviewed. Nothing spoke to me as timely as this did, because I've been asking these questions myself a lot of ways, no joke. And it's so crazy. It's so timely that, recently over the last couple of weeks, I just ended up, I've been in the same zone, working out, no results. Like, why am I not losing weight? I've gained weight when the pandemic started. I think bad diet and, just a bad mental state. Had me at a weight I'd never been before, I guess 20 pounds plus. And I started working out starting, end of summer, and I would see maybe 1 to 2 pounds loss. And I'm telling you, I'd be at the gym 6 to 7 days a week, 2 hours a day. What is going on? It's like, it's impossible not to lose weight when you're putting that much effort. That's a big conversation from the start of this film. Even recently, I started losing weight, changing of diet too. That was a big thing. But I ended up taking, for whatever reason, I had like an extra spare blood glucose thing. And I recognized that I am basically pre-diabetic state. I would have a fasting think of like 105, 106 in the morning without eating. And I'm telling you, this happened recently over the last couple of weeks. It scared me, Jonathan. It scared me. And I'm on a whole kind of new mindset, and watching this film really spoke to me like nothing else, because these are real things that I am literally staring in the face right now. And boy, not only did I learn a lot, but it's been a wake-up call for me. And just seeing a lot of these stories being documented there and the research, it's just unbelievable.
Well, thank you, Jim. Yeah, anything that you can, I know we're doing this show, but anything you can do to help us spread the word would be really appreciated, because it's very much a life-saving, we feel, and I think the science supports initiative. So any help spreading the word is deeply appreciated.
No question, it's affecting me. So it's like, I'm telling you, it was unbelievable how it hit me. And the things that we think, it's like a lot of this information we don't know about, like, how we think, like it's being talked in a film about, yeah, you put in less calories and you work out more, effort, and you think naturally you'd lose weight, but that's not the science of it, and I've proven fact working out and trying to eat less and still not losing weight for a long time. Tell me your kind of discovery for those that haven't seen the film yet. In a sense, what did you discover along this journey for people who put in a lot of workout, work out a lot and not losing, people who work out trying to gain muscle can't? Tell me what the finding was, because I thought it was extremely fascinating scientifically even.
The biggest finding is that this is not an effort problem. So really what you just characterized is exactly the situation. We've been taught that we need to try harder. We need
Right.
to eat less. We need to exercise more. Obesity, diabetes, those related conditions are willpower problems. Essentially, if you want to look at it as some people look at it, they are the universe punishing you for being lazy or stupid or not working hard enough. And that is completely wrong, completely backwards, and frankly is actually the cause of this diabetes and obesity epidemic, because it really indoctrinates us with a sense of shame, and it makes us do you remember the cartoon The Far Side?
I do believe so. Yes. Yes, I do remember.
Pretty famous cartoon series written by a guy named Gary Larson, and one of
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It took me a second to think about, but I remember the name. Yes.
So one of his most famous comics it's called Midvale School for the Gifted, and it's a picture of a person just pushing on a door that says pull, and it says Midvale School for the Gifted. So of course there's an irony that a gifted person would be pushing on a door labeled pull, but frankly that's what we've been taught to do. We've been taught to push on a metabolic door labeled pull. This is not an effort problem. This is not an issue of needing to eat less or to exercise more. It's not about quantity. It's about having the right information, and it's about focusing on quality. So the actual science, and we don't have time to get into all this science. We didn't have time to get into all this science in the film, but exercising smarter and less and eating more but better are the keys to living better.
That's unbelievable. You know, like in a sense, it's kind of what why did we kind of have it always backwards too? Like there's a lot of smart people and trainers and dietitians, and it's almost been kind of like a long fable, you know, that's been going on that over the years. It's been kind of like, well, yeah, we haven't, it seems to work in some cases, just kind of like a known thing that everyone just kind of assumed was fact and never looked into a lot of these personal situations. You know, why do you think we didn't kind of caught on as a mainstream? Like the doctors and people in the know who've researched, obviously, but it hasn't caught on in the mainstream public, this sort of kind of thing. You know, we have a lot of different diets, and you can almost get overwhelmed with diets, you know, because there's so many various types of which one should I take and which one works. And one says to eat a lot of fats and meats, one doesn't. It's overwhelming, you know, like what do I do? But tell me why we haven't caught on to this in a sense as a general public.
One of the biggest challenges is that eating less, it's not that eating less and exercising more doesn't work at all, ever. It's that it doesn't work well or sustainably. And so this is the problem, right? Because if you stop eating and just go running until you pass out, you will lose weight, right? There's no question. But I mean, and that seems like a joke, right? But if you look at The Biggest Loser television series, which was wildly popular, that's what they did. It was basically, let's round people up, starve them, and torture them with exercise. And look, they lose weight. So when you do something and it yields short-term results, the way human psychology works is it's very difficult for us to say, wait, that's not the right approach, because we are actually seeing results. Something is happening. But when those results start to fall down over time, it's difficult to say that doesn't work, because it did work, but it doesn't continue to work. So that's like why when you see the film, you sort of say to yourself, you know, this is somewhat obvious, and it's my personal experience. So how could so many people for so many years believe a lie? Well, it's not a lie. It's just really ineffective, but it works well enough to deceive us into that if we just try it harder. Like imagine that you know, square peg, circular hole. And if you could like kind of get it in, like it kind of fits. And if you could just push harder, like just try harder to get that square peg. And if you really push and the edges of the square kind of melt off and shave off as you're jamming it through and your hand starts to bleed, but you're just like, no, I'm just going to jam it harder. You know, someone could say, if you just pushed harder, you would get the square peg through the circular hole. Look, part of it's already through. And that's true, but why not just fit a square peg into a square hole, right? There is a different approach. And that's what we're introducing in this film is it's not that starvation doesn't cause you to lose weight. It does. Very few people go to a concentration camp and get heavier. It's that it's not the most effective, long-term and sustainable and enjoyable approach. And frankly, it's not even healthy. There is a better way.
Mm-hmm. And what is that better way? There's a name for it in the film, you know, with this method. I want you to kind of explain in a lot of, there's so much information. One thing is I feel like I need to watch it a few times too, just to grasp different areas of what being covered. Even though it's pretty self-explanatory. I'd say this movie, you don't need anyone professional to help you guide you along with, but there's so many different concepts in a sense and you know, ways of what's going on in your body that's very educational. But what is the method kind of in layman's terms, in a sense, you know, whoever's watching this to kind of understand, grasp how it works really?
This better approach that I mentioned, right? Everything we said, eat less, exercise more, that's quantity based, right? Eat less quantity, exercise more quantity. The better approach is to focus on quality of what you're eating. But if I just say that, you're like, okay, cool. What are what makes a food higher quality, right? I know how to eat.
Yeah.
I know how to eat less. You take the portion, cut it in half, I can eat less. But what does eating higher quality mean? Well, that's when we go to the research and we say there's 4 factors that determine the quality of a calorie. And those are abbreviated using the acronym SANE. So the S stands for satiety, how quickly a food fills you up and how long it keeps you full. For example, the Pringles company tells you once you pop, you can't stop. They're telling you by eating 500 calories of Pringles, you will be hungrier. Eating calories makes you hungrier. So there are more satisfying and less satisfying calories. The A in SANE stands for aggression, or the hormonal impact of calories. The N stands for nutrient density, or how much essential good stuff the food carries with it relative to the amount of addictive and toxic stuff in the food. And the E stands for efficiency, or how readily your body can store these foods as fat. So it's a lot of science there, but it's an acronym is SANE, and there are sane foods and insane foods. And to simplify this, sane foods are, in order, non-starchy vegetables, nutrient-dense protein, whole food fats, and low fructose fruits. Basically, if you eat those foods in that order, your life will be radically better and you'll never need to count calories again.
Wow, you see, it's simple in theory, but you know, it's putting into practice and just kind of going with that. You know, that's the thing. Another fascinating fact is a lot about the gut and brain. I think we've done a lot of in recent years, in a sense, there's been now a correlation how your gut affects your brain, which we didn't technically look at in a lot of ways, how that works. And there's that brain inflammation talk that we talk about it too in the film, a lot about that. Dude, tell me about that, because I feel like the brain, it really has it controls, in a sense, what like cravings and so many things. It's mental, you know, it's not even physical. It's just like routines. I know myself from like routines, like, oh, I'd be used to having like a tea and a cookie or a pastry in the evening, like the last thing after dinner, you know, just kind of a relaxing type of thing. And it's like, when I stopped that, it was just like, oh my God, where's my cookie? You know, like it's your brain controlling you to an essence where it's like you're not in control, because it's telling you, where's that? It's a conditioned thing. Tell me about that concept, brain inflammation, and how much our minds really affect, in a sense, our bodies and our weight.
Diabetes and obesity can really be characterized by not a willpower issue, but rather a disease of your brain, your gut, and your hormones. We talk about that in detail in the film, but specifically about your brain and what you talked about here. Again, the idea of willpower is so ignorant. Like, you know, it's just ignorant, right? Because, for example, imagine that someone, think about the opioid crisis. So someone has a heroin addiction, and imagine they went to get help and someone just said, well, can you just try harder to stop taking heroin? Right? No, we would all say that's stupid. Like, how could you ever tell someone that? It doesn't make sense, because there is a deep psychological and addictive properties involved here. We need to look at it differently. So when you look at the vast majority of foods that people eat nowadays, they're not foods. They're food-like products that have been engineered to trigger similar responses in your brain as heroin. Of course, lower dose, but for example, refined sugar is an opioid. It stimulates the same receptors in your brain as heroin or cocaine, just at a lower dose. And this is why, for example, if I were to say, hey, can you just stop eating chicken for 3 weeks? You wouldn't like get the sweats. You wouldn't start to get a headache. You wouldn't shake if you couldn't eat chicken. But try to not eat processed sugar for 3 weeks. You will literally get the shakes, a terrible headache. You will go through withdrawal because there is an addictive property here, and willpower is no match for addiction. We have to take a smarter approach.
You're right. You know, when I started in the past couple of weeks, I'm going through this right now, so I can very much relate to a lot of these concepts. And when I saw my, you know, like blood glucose consistently over a few days span being that high, it's like withdrawal of sugar. Like, okay, you can't completely kill it off because it like messes with your head. And like, yeah, you get the, in a sense, the jitters or like this insane craving for something sugary. But you kind of do it in small doses. Like, okay, I'll just have an orange or an apple to try to crave instead of the chocolate or whatnot. It is very controlling, and it's difficult to just cut that off. As you mentioned, something like chicken, like, you technically can be fine without it, but like there's so much things in sugar and sugar itself. It is tough to stop that. It's unbelievable how we kind of don't recognize how sugar, in a sense, and sugary substances are an addiction, you know, versus other things, and how it messes with us as potentially an actual drug.
It's very heartbreaking because when you think about even our children, right? So I'm the father of a 2.5-year-old and a 7-month-old. So this is really hits near and dear to my heart when, for instance, if you walk down the street and you saw a mother hand her 2.5-year-old a cigarette to take a puff out of it, you could be the most laid back person in the world. You'd probably be like, stop. Like you would probably intervene, right? Yeah. But we see even in schools, our children being handed concentrated, liquefied, mainlined processed sugar. And we now know, like, not only is that causing metabolic damage, not only is it causing obesity, which causes all sorts of psychological damage, but it's also conditioning their brains to have this addiction that is very difficult to break over time. It's very heartbreaking.
And you mentioned another interesting fact is about, you know, the medicine too. Like you can have, like, if you're pre-diabetic in a sense or whatnot, you can have medicine and lowers you down and it kind of keeps things in check. But if, you know, it's like putting, I thought it's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound, you know, for a while. Cause like, okay, you feel like you're good. The scores look good, but if you don't change your diet, it's still going to be there. And then, you know, after a while, I think one person mentioned in the film, like, oh, I'm on insulin suddenly. Like what, you know, like it was just like a temporary kind of day-to-day remedy, but that didn't fix the problem in itself. And that's scary too, in an essence too, when you think about it that way.
Not only does it not fix the problem, but because it seems like it fixes the problem, but it doesn't, it makes the problem worse. Let me give you a metaphor, for instance. Mm-hmm. Let's say that you had your hand and you stuck it on a hot stove, and your solution to that was to inject Novocaine into your hand so that you couldn't feel the pain. So in a sense, you've solved the problem. Your hand doesn't hurt anymore. You ain't gonna have a hand, because it's going to get melted off by the stove, right? So in some ways, the way we're treating diabetes, for example, is we're numbing the symptoms. But by numbing the symptoms, we're not addressing the underlying problem. And we're frankly, in some cases, eliminating the need to address the underlying problem. And this is why, for instance, I use the hand on the stove metaphor intentionally, because, and this has personally impacted me and my family members, you know, you think you've got your diabetes under control because you're on medication, and then 10 years later, you need to get your leg amputated. Like that's, or you go blind, right? Diabetes is the leading cause of avoidable amputations and blindness. That's pretty freaking terrible.
Mm-hmm. And you know, now it hit me close to home. It made me think more about diabetes as a disease, because we hear about diabetes. It's so common, like the film illustrates, you know, how, years ago, that was like not even that long ago in our lifetimes potentially, that it wasn't that, it was kind of rare. People didn't have it. And now you see young kids having it and all sorts. It's like almost like it's treated in a weird way by society as like a cold, like, oh yeah, they have diabetes, but it's like, it's as big as cancer. Like Phil mentioned, it takes more deaths sometimes than cancer. It's unbelievable, the statistics that it is about it. And we just don't view it that alarmingly. I just wonder why. And especially it's in such a horrible, debilitating disease. Like you mentioned, eyesight, limbs losing. This is serious stuff. Why don't we take this as in a sense, it's a pandemic that's among us, but we don't take it that alarmingly. I don't understand why it's kind of, in a sense, swept under a rug. It's like, oh, it's diabetes, as if it's like, whoa, we need to treat this immediately. This is very serious.
This is something I do have a simple answer for. And it is, we have found ways to make diabetes take a long time to kill you. So, but let me unpack that, because this is a really important distinction, right? So if you get a stage 3 cancer diagnosis, one of the reasons that we attack it so aggressively is because we're like, if you don't do anything about this, it will kill you in a year, right? Or even a COVID infection. If you don't do something about this, it will kill you in 2 weeks. The problem with the way we're treating diabetes, and I use the word treating intentionally, is the way we treat, we literally say, manage your diabetes. If you have type 2 diabetes, or what used to be called adult onset diabetes, not called that anymore, because as you said, children are getting it. Yeah. Managing it means, here's how to make it kill you more slowly. And if it takes 20 years to kill you, well, that's a 20-year from now problem. That's not a today problem, but it is a today problem. Like that's what we need people to understand, because it's not that it's going to kill you in 20 years. It's that it's going to literally take 20 years off your life. Like if you get a diabetes diagnosis at the age of 40, it's estimated that you're going to lose multiple decades of life. I mean, that's no joke, let alone the quality of life you're going to lose during that now shortened life. So the simple answer to your question is like, why don't people treat it as an urgent problem? Because the way we treat it or manage it, it doesn't seem like it's an urgent problem, but it is.
Mm-hmm. Well said. And, to be more positive in a sense, there is hope. That's the thing about it here, that it's not a death sentence, especially if you're pre-diabetic, whatnot. This is potentially very reversible. Tell me about that aspect. Like someone in, I guess, my situation right now, I guess I'd be very early stages or pre-diabetic, where I'm fortunate enough that I caught it even by accident. I noticed this, that I can take the changes. What can people do to stop this onset? Because it is very preventable, and you don't need to do that much. You don't need any sort of extravagant, therapies or anything like that to stop it. And what can we do if you're on that early onset to stop this disease?
Yeah, so whether or not you're early onset or you actually have a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, and just one real quick thing here, we're not talking about type 1 diabetes. There's a type of diabetes that you're born with. We are not talking about that. We're talking about the diabetes that develops later in life, usually due to lifestyle. So when you have that type of diabetes, we talked about cancer earlier. So it's really important to distinguish these two types of diseases, because if you get a cancer diagnosis, we do not have a cure for cancer. We have treatments, we have ways to put it in remission, but there's really, you better go see an oncologist, because that's a thing, right? If you're diabetic or pre-diabetic, again, not talking about type 1 diabetes, like the Harvard doctors we work with in this film, without a shadow of a doubt, like that blood sugar problem, without any medical intervention, can be reversed. Period. Like it's not even ambiguous. You can absolutely, through diet and lifestyle changes, take that, like if that diagnosis is, if your blood sugar is here or higher, you're diabetic. If it's here, you're pre-diabetic. If it's here, you're not. Through different choices and through the right information and education, you can take that number from here and you can bring it down to here. Now, I'm not allowed to use the C word because they'll throw me in jail. So, but if you can go from here to here, that's pretty amazing. And that's pretty unique, because for other fatal diseases like cancer, there's nothing I can sit here and tell you, well, if you just change your life in this way, you won't,
Right.
the cancer cells will not be there anymore. But with this potentially fatal epidemic disease, we literally have the tools and the information to free ourselves from it. We just need access to them. And that's what this film tries to do.
Yeah. And any quick tips that people who are in that situation could do, like in a sense, immediately to start moving in the right direction of it, to reversing that potentially?
As much as possible, instead so two things. One, eat so many more vegetables, just vegetable. I'm talking vegetables you could eat raw. So potatoes and corn are not a vegetable. So vegetables you could eat raw. You don't have to eat them raw, but you could eat them raw. Eat so many of those that you're too full for starches and sugar. So this isn't like a low carb diet. I'm not talking about going keto. I'm not saying anything about keto. What I am saying is that vegetables in many ways are a really great way to help reverse this. And sugar has actually at this point been proven. I gave a TEDx talk where I talk about the study. They have shown that sugar, processed added sugar, is as tightly correlated to a diabetes diagnosis as smoking cigarettes is correlated to a lung cancer diagnosis. So we have so clearly linked smoking to lung cancer that doctors will say smoking causes lung cancer. That same statistical significance exists for refined sugar and diabetes. If you are drinking soda, you are doing to your body for diabetes what you would be doing for your lungs and lung cancer if you were smoking. So please, more vegetables, less processed sugar and starches.
Interesting. And it goes two ways too, because sugar is just unbelievable how that's kind of the number one thing for a lot of these causes, because you will lose weight apparently. Because I noticed myself, honestly, I dropped more weight in the last month than I have over the last 8 months by working out crazy, just by lowering significantly my sugar intake. It contributes heavily to your weight gain too. That extra weight that you're having is sugar weight, and a lot of it caused by sugar, processed sugar and whatnot. I've noticed that myself. So the sugar intake, in a sense, can work two ways to lower your diabetes and your weight too, another thing at the same time.
And there's another benefit to it as well, which is if in the past you, for example, just try to starve yourself, you try to eat less. Like the longer you try to eat less, the harder it gets. Right? You might be able to fast for a day. Fasting 2 days is harder, so on and so forth. The less sugar you eat, the less sugar cravings you'll have. So this is really powerful to think about, right? To try to, like, if you're just like, hey, I'm just going to give up sugar. Day 1 is going to be terrible. Day 2 is going to be terrible. Day 3 is going to be terrible. But if you can keep it up, like month 2 is so much easier than month 1, and month 3, it's not an issue. Like you could still, that doesn't mean you can never eat sugar again. But what it means is you could maybe try something a little bit sweet, and it's going to hit you so hard. Like think about it like alcohol tolerance, right? If you drink a lot of alcohol, you need a lot of alcohol to have the same effect. People who have successfully given up refined sugar will eat an orange, and this is a fact, and be like, holy crap, that is the sweetest thing I have ever tried. Or they'll drink Mountain Dew and go, oh my God, that's disgusting. Yes. It's almost bitter. It's so sweet. Or the day you eat a raw almond and you can taste sweetness, like that's a pretty powerful day, because just think about that. It's not that you're never going to get that same sensation. Like everyone loves that sensation you get when you eat something sweet. So we're not talking about getting rid of that sensation. We're talking about enabling your body to get that sensation with just such a low dose of sugar that it doesn't have any negative health implications.
I can speak for that. I kid you not. I cut off sugar and I had an orange, and it hit me like I had sugar overdose after one orange. And it was a small one. It was more like a glorified tangerine. It was a very tiny orange, but I had it. I'm like, what is going on with me? Because it felt like I had an overdose of sugar. Like I couldn't even finish the orange. It felt like that's sweet and I was done. And it's unbelievable because I could have probably eaten like 3 of them prior and I wouldn't feel anything. That is so true. And I can totally speak for that, that once you kind of go off of it, that thinks when you have sugary stuff, it tastes like 3 times sweeter and more filling. So you're filled after one dose of whatever thing you have that's sugary. Before I kind of let you go, I wanted to ask you about a lot of people substitute sugar in a sense for like drinks that are 0 sugar. Like that's a popular thing in our society, like 0 calories, 0 sugar, diet, right? Drinks too. Tell me about those and what they mean when they say 0 sugar or no sugar, but yet there's still a Powerade or whatever it is, a soda, you know, in that essence. What does it mean?
Sugar is not good, but at the same time, artificial sweeteners are also not good. So they have a different bad impact on your body. We talked about your brain earlier. They have a tremendously negative impact on your brain, but this doesn't mean you can't have anything sweet ever, right? There are what doctors have found to be, or what we like to call safe sweeteners or sane sweeteners. So there are things like stevia, monk fruit, erythritol, and xylitol. Those are the last 2 are sugar alcohols. The first 2 are herbs. And there are a lot more beverages and products being produced with these sweeteners. I forget, there's a tremendous number of sparkling waters at this point that are sweetened with erythritol or xylitol. So you can still enjoy the taste of sweet. It's just that you want to try to not get it from processed sugar or artificial sweeteners, but these alternate natural sweeteners that I just listed.
Interesting. So there's still a way to have that, but in a safer way, but also be kind of mindful of the other potential impacts of it too. So,
and you won't need as much, which is great for the reasons we just talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that making that commitment to abstain from sugar. Really, that's where it starts in a lot of ways too. And you know, you can do it. And you mentioned it's hard. It's definitely hard in the first week. You have the cravings and it's literally like getting off a drug or some medicine. You know, it really has that impact. And I can speak for it for myself, my own personal experience but it gets better. And everything you said, I can validate at least with my personal experience in that way. So I just thought the film is just tremendous in so many ways. I even love the graphics, how they illustrate. I think certain things like, you know, where the fat deposits kind of explode and get inflamed. Like there's a lot of visuals in this film that illustrate things and explain things self-explanatory without it. But I just thought a fantastic film, and it was really good to see real life people to go through, because sometimes you can have narratives and stuff, but how important was that to have these real people that you call heroes, you know, in the film that speak about candidly and very passionately and emotionally about their experience.
It's extremely important. It's really what I think differentiates this film from a lot of films out there. 2 things. Well, obviously the relationship with these top doctors at Harvard is an incredible honor. The fact that the movie, as you mentioned, provides an actual roadmap to solve this problem, I think is a differentiator, right? You watch a lot of documentaries and it just makes you feel like crap because you're just like, well, we're all screwed. And then
and I mentioned there's positivity in here too. Yeah, so I said it, like it's not doom and gloom all around.
And then the third thing is, you know, we anchor all of this to reality with these amazing diabesity heroes that are at all points of the journey. We have individuals just starting the journey, that are midway through the journey, and individuals who have conquered this epidemic, so that no matter where you are on the path, you'll be able to see yourself in someone in the film.
Yeah, and I thought that was very powerful. I can't honestly wait to show this film to my family members, and I know so many people have struggled with different points, either always kind of having weight issues throughout their lives or just eating bad. Like I come from an Eastern European family, so I was bred in a sense on bread and potatoes, heavy foods like that, and starches and corns and all these things that, and my mother still kind of eats, but it's, that we're trying to, as a family, make a conscious effort to eat better and remove these things that you're kind of brought up with and know historically, because what you eat, growing up. And I think this film will be really powerful. It sincerely impacted me, and I know several people that I can't wait to show this to and share it with that will really make a difference. Like you said, this film can really speak, whether it's not you, you know someone who has gone through it or is impacted by it. Like you said, this is a movie that really touches everyone. So I'm so glad I came across that, and excited to talk to you because it was so timely for me too. But just fantastic work all around, and research and putting it together. Where can people find this film? Because I really want to urge, is there social media, a website? Where can they kind of reach out to learn more about you and the film?
Please just go to bettermovie.com. Again, that's bettermovie.com.
Absolutely. I will spread the word, Jonathan. I sincerely believe in this. And I thought it was one of the most impactful films I've seen. I've seen a lot, especially documentaries. So fantastic work. Thank you for spreading the word in a lot of ways too, and making a lot of questions that, a lot of people, regular folks, don't have professionals to talk to, or trainers or whatnot, and they go through these struggles wondering what's going on with me. But it's a lot more than that, and this film really answers these questions. So definitely will spread the word, and I'll definitely follow up with you on my own personal journey too about how things are going. But I'll be watching this over and over for sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Jonathan. Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.